And now, the Shazam ISIS Hour, Part 2, ISIS.
"O my queen," said the royal sorcerer to Hatshepsut, "with this amulet, you and your descendants are endowed by the goddess Isis with the powers of the animals and the elements. You will soar as the falcon soars, run with the speed of gazelles, and command the elements of sky and earth." 3,000 years later, a young science teacher dug up this lost treasure and found she was heir to the secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Cindy Lee, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice.
How come you want to catch firewood? I thought that you didn't like chores.
I don't. That's just why I'm in trouble.
Trouble?
Yeah, I signed my dad's name for my permission slip so I can get out of cleaning the yard.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast. It's your old mentor, John S. Drew here, and we're continuing our journey down the highways and byways of the land, discussing those two iconic shows of the 1970s, Shazam and the Secrets of Isis. And joining me once again, as he's done since the very beginning, is the big red cheese himself, Mr. Richard F. Lee. Hey, Richard.
Well, hello, Professor Drew. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I mean, I'm excited because we're finally getting to do an episode we promised to do a while ago, but the scheduling got all screwed up with what really was the broadcast episodes, and we finally figured that all out. We're doing Rockhound's Roost today.
Yeah, I hadn't had time to really look at these episodes because I've been out rock hunting.
You catch any good rocks? Find anything good?
Yeah, I caught a lot of good things. They were trying to run away from me, but boy, I had my hunter's license and I was able to catch them. Oh, wait.
Yeah. So tell us about Rockhound's Roost.
Well, this episode of The Secrets of Isis, again called Rockhound's Roost, is an episode that was first aired on October 11th, 1975. Now, according to the production notes that we see in the DVD extras on the brochure that comes with the Secrets of Isis DVD, shooting began back on August 13th, 1975, now mostly in Malibu Canyon. Now, the fictional high school that Andrea teaches at is like Larkspur High School, established in 1938 according to a sign sometimes seen near the front doors of the school. Now, that's something that I had a question about earlier because I had thought, and I wasn't paying too much attention to the details there, but what's the name of this high school that she teaches at? Well, we know it as Larkspur High School, whatever that was. I never heard of Mr. Larkspur before.
Well, I was just wondering, because you say you see the sign, but is it possible that they put that there for, just the episode itself and that really wasn't the name of it? Or are you certain that could be the name?
I'm never certain of anything in these episodes. I wasn't certain is Cindy Lee a teacher's assistant, or is she a student, or is she a little girl, or is she a teenager? I can't be certain. This is a time when shows like The Secrets of Isis and others were not always consistent with continuity like television shows of today tend to be. So if the writers intended for this school to be known as Larkspur, I wouldn't have known it from any episode because I don't think that the name is even mentioned verbally in any of the scripts of The Secrets of Isis.
Yeah. Because just doing a quick scan here, there's a Redwood High School in Larkspur, California. Now, and looking at it here, it doesn't mention anything about that it was formerly known as Larkspur and it changed the name to Redwood or something like that. So I'm assuming that's not the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we looking at again, bringing up the question I think that you were trying to say, are we looking at something that the producers created, or is this really a genuine place?
Right.
By that name?
Yeah, because now for for instance, recently, my school was used for the TV show Madam Secretary. And what they did was they took down all the Spellman identification on the doors, and they put up their own stencils for the fictional school that Madam Secretary, Taya Leone's character plays. Her son goes to that high school, but they used the physical building itself for the school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot in a lot of television shows and movies, of course.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks that, yeah, that's probably what they did here. But another part of me says, did they have the budget to even have stencils to create a fictional high school? I don't know.
Yeah. So let's talk about this episode. It was written by Robert F. Joseph and directed, once again, by Arnold Lavin.
And Arnold Lavin, here's something to throw out there. I'm glad that Arnold Lavin's name appears here so we can talk about him for a second.
Okay.
Lee Majors worked with Arnold Lavin. And Arnold Lavin is the director who told Lee Majors some key advice that Lee Majors did not take. Arnold Lavin said to Lee Majors, if you're going to succeed in this business of acting, you can't keep raising your left eyebrow. And Lee Majors did not obey Arnold Lavin's advice. He never took it. And he said that he knew of kids running around on the school playground when $6 Million Man was popular, running around in slow motion with their left eyebrow raised.
I was one of them.
So that is the only Arnold Lavin story that I have to tell. That's kind of cool. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Now, you've also got a story for one of our guest cast.
Well, not too many. I think you can find a story for each one of these actors, but we have somewhat of a big guest cast here. There's Stephen Paul as Kevin McCauley.
Right.
Now, he made the Guinness Book of World Records in 1979, some 4 years after this episode was filmed, as the FALA youngest producer. He was a playwright at 12 years old. And according to the IMDb notes, he served as the manager for John Voight and Gene Wilder. And we also have as a guest actor on this episode, Thomas Carter as Fabian. And the character of Fabian looks like he's from Africa. He's a foreign student. And Thomas Carter is an actor who's still very busy in the business, apparently. According to IMDb, he also played Dr. Ben Carson, the famous neurosurgeon who ran for president. And also in the guest cast, we have Bill DeLand as Mr. McCauley. So there's a pretty sizable guest cast here. We got some actors who are going to be portraying very strong characters that we're going to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So the episode opens with our character of Kevin trying to sneak out of the house, and he runs into Fabian, who's riding his bike. He runs into him with his own bike, upsetting the contents of Fabian's bike.
Hey, why don't you watch where you're going?
Me?
Can't you even ride a bike?
But you ran into me.
You don't know how to do anything.
You get this impression that there's something almost xenophobic about him because Fabian clearly has an accent, and Kevin's kind of looking at him going, you can never do anything right, and he just goes off. So there's something familiar about the two of them, but at the same time there's also a clear established hostility. This isn't something that just happened right at that moment. And that's when Kevin's father comes out, Mr. McCauley, and he offers to help Fabian pick up his stuff, including the rocks, and they bond for a moment as two old rockhounds, or well, McCauley's the old rockhound, but anyway, Kevin's father has to get the garbage out as Kevin didn't do it, and that's when Fabian offers to help. It's a nice little scene.
It is. It's a nice scene, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It actually it sets up who the characters are, the three basic characters, the new characters we're going to see in this week's episode. Mm-hmm. And it's very quick. The dialogue is very fast. You have the introduction of two characters right off the bat, and there's already set up for the audience an antagonistic character, antagonistic towards the other character, and then the foreign character who has the accent bonds with the antagonist's father. Kind of a nice touch there.
Yeah.
There's no real hostility between the father. He's not xenophobic at all or anything of the sort. But there is bonding, as you say, and that's done in a matter of a few seconds, knowing, once again, we keep saying this time and again on The Secrets of ISIS, the economy of writing. Very fast, very quick. Doesn't take a long time to flesh out who these characters are, and going into backstory, it seems to be demonstrated almost instantaneously, John.
Yeah, I agree.
So the next scene, we see the classroom as Andrea Thomas lectures on rocks. Now, the camera pans to all these students who are here in this class. And what happens? Kevin yawns his indifference just as the camera comes across to his face. Now, that's establishing something for the audience, that here's the same kid who knocked over Fabian's bike tends to be somewhat of a screw-off who doesn't care. But I do have to admit, that's good timing, because the camera is panning the extras. When it happens to hit this actor playing Kevin, he yawns on cue like he's supposed to. Good touch. Good touch. It's not by accident. They plan and block these scenes very carefully. And when you consider this was a low-budget Saturday morning children's television show, they didn't have a lot of time to block and didn't have a lot of time to do retakes. So they had to do this almost perfectly on the first take.
Right.
So those are little touches that are important when you're making films. You've got to know that nothing happens by accident or is supposed to happen by accident. It's supposed to be well blocked, well planned. Fabian shows up a little bit late, and he comes to bring his rock collection to show.
Hi. Good morning, Fabian. You're a little late.
I'm sorry, Miss Thomas, but I had some trouble with my bike. It won't happen again.
It's all right. You brought your rock collection?
Mm-hmm. Got it right here.
May I?
Mm-hmm.
But he makes no excuses.
No, he doesn't make any excuses. He just shows up.
Look at the different bands of color. That's agate. This is a very good collection, Fabian.
Well, thank you. Many of these specimens come from my country.
That reminds me, Dr. Barnes put in a call to your embassy this morning. I'm sure you'll be able to make the Rockhounds field trip with all of us.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Well, we're all set except for Kevin. Are you sure you won't change your mind?
Huh? Oh, now the Rockhound will do okay without me.
Okay. Well then, let's look at some gold under a microscope. Gold? Iron pyrite. Fool's gold. Come on.
Mr. Barnes is mentioned in this scene. Mm-hmm. Again, although, once again, like in the prior episode that we did, The Outsider, he doesn't make an actual appearance, John.
Right. Yeah.
Now, we're told, now this is some clever, I don't know if you want to call it clever writing or not. Maybe I think it is. Maybe it's not really clever. Dr. Barnes calls Fabian's embassy and is cleared to go on a field trip.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's just another way to shoehorn Mr. Barnes in here without having to pay the actor to appear in this episode, I guess. But why would it be necessary for a principal to call an embassy? Is that really necessary, John?
Well, considering who, Fabian is, as we learn as the story goes on, maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, I've traveled, and no one's had to call the U.S. Embassy when I wanted to go on strange field trips. I've been on a few of them overseas. I can guarantee that. Well, then again, I'm not really all that important.
You're not going to be the king of your country someday?
No, well, maybe I will, but I'll secede from the Union. Let's see how that works. So, Andrea mentions the term iron pyrite again. Does that sound familiar to the listeners of our podcast who are followers of the Shazam ISIS Hour?
Yeah, it should.
It should, because iron pyrite was mentioned in the episode Fool's Gold from season 2 of Shazam. That's just a nice little touch. I think that's just a coincidence, John. I don't think they had the other episode in mind.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think, like we've talked about this before. There are certain tropes of the 70s that every TV show covered at some point, and this was just ISIS's way, just like, Shazam did it, because there was this obsession with Fool's Gold. There was a Little House on the Prairie episode with it. There's been other ones. I think there was even a Knight Rider episode with iron pyrite. So no, this was not anything in terms of making a connection. It was just playing up another trope. Considering we're talking about rock collecting in general, let's throw in Fool's Gold in there as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And, as watching this episode as a kid, I do have to admit that seeing these things, I never cared about rock collecting. I never cared about a lot of the activities that these fictional characters were doing. All I wanted to do was listen to a good story and watch ISIS come and save the day. Now, as we see these shows in hindsight, now that we're older, I'm looking at them and going, they were well written insofar as that they portrayed characters who did realistic things that real people do. Mm-hmm. They showed them collecting rocks. They showed them going on field trips. They showed them playing basketball. They showed them engaging in outdoor activities. They did things that were very realistic in what real people do. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, I sure didn't have much of a life at 8 years old. Because even the fictional characters were doing things that were realistic, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
So anyway, to wrap up this brief scene, Fabian mentions to Kevin that he met Kevin's dad. And Kevin tells him to stick to his rocks. What an a-hole, John.
Well, especially considering when he comes in, and the director even sort of makes a point of showing Kevin's face. Fabian, as I said, doesn't make any excuses. He doesn't say, I was helping Kevin's father with something that Kevin was supposed to do, or anything like that. He just says, I'm sorry I'm late. You would think Kevin would be a little more nicer about it, but no, he's just, stick to your rocks. Yeah, he's a jerk. He's a jerk.
Exactly.
And he continues to be a jerk later on when he goes home and he's outside playing a little basketball, and his father comes up to him and lectures him about responsibilities, especially considering Kevin's mother's away, so he has to pull his share. And his father wants Kevin to help him with a yard cleaning party that weekend before the mother gets home. So Kevin doesn't look happy about that.
No, not at all. And this is typical of a lot of people. When we grew up as teenagers, we didn't want to take responsibilities.
Right.
And unfortunately for some of us, that actually carries into adulthood. A lot of adults today don't want to do responsibilities that are necessary to maintain a household.
Yeah.
And here, this is a realistic portrayal of a teenage boy. He doesn't want to do anything. But once again, John, here's another subtle theme that comes in. You don't meet Kevin's mother. She's mentioned off screen. And they're waiting, Dad and the son are waiting for Mom to come home. Once again, in the 1970s, especially on a children's show, there were no single parents.
Yeah.
If the mother was mentioned, the father was on screen, you had to assume that they were married and Mom was just not there that day, and vice versa.
Well,
so we've seen this on the Secrets of ISIS. We've seen it on Shazam. On a kid's show in the 1970s, there were no such things as single parents.
Well, I agree with you except for one thing. In the last episode, I don't recall Paul and his father mentioning a wife or a mother in that episode.
That may be true, and it's entirely possible that that is correct. That might have been an oversight on the part of the writers, but also I think they should have thrown a reference to the mom in, because who's going to bail their kids out of juvenile hall?
Well, especially since the father was so excited to be going to jail with the kids.
Yes, referring to the last episode of Shazam, Speak No Evil, I thought you'd never ask, and he eagerly gets into the back of a patrol car. I know that we're off track here, but we can't let that episode die. It bleeds over into an episode of The Secrets of ISIS when we're doing a review.
Yeah.
So, after Kevin tries to get out of responsibilities and just does not want to help Dad out very much, we see our trio of Rick, Andrea, and Cindy Lee sitting on the grass.
Aye, there's still plenty of wild critters in them dar hills.
Like what?
Like bears.
Really?
Just kidding, I hope.
This is where it'll be going. It's called Rockhound's Roost. It's a great place to get all sorts of rock specimens.
Excuse me, Miss Thomas? Here's my permission slip for the rock hunt this weekend. It's all right if I come.
Of course. I'm so glad you changed your mind. Would you like to see where we're going?
Thanks, but I gotta run.
Funny. He wasn't interested at all before. And now, well...
Unfortunately, John, this is too realistic, I'm afraid. It is realistic. Teenagers do this kind of
sure.
crap.
Yeah. He does. I mean, I see it with my kids all the time. And meanwhile, we get to the trip, and we see that Fabian seems to be doing the major share.
Pause, John.
What's the matter?
You're a teacher. I'm not going to let you get away with that too quickly.
What's that?
You just said, yeah, I have trouble with that with my kids. In the meantime, you want to transition and segue to something.
I mean, we can get all into this with the moral and such later on, but it's I've talked about this with kids before. I've said that, many of the lessons of Shazam and ISIS could really be learned by a lot of kids today, and this is definitely one of them. Nothing is the kid's responsibility. I have kids who, we have now a online homework thing. It's our responsibility to put the homework online. It's no longer the kid's responsibility to write it in a book and bring the book home and show it to the parents. And even then, the parents, and I say this, I mentioned it last episode, I say it again, parents are just as bad as instilling these bad habits in these kids. Because I've got parents who are contacting me and asking me if every few weeks I can send a progress report. I'm like, the grades are online, my notes of what the kids are doing wrong is online, you get a progress report every quarter, and the homework is online every night. What more do I have to do? When do you and your kid take responsibility for their education?
Just like I said about the scene a moment ago where the father wants Kevin to help clean up the place before mom comes home.
Yeah.
That in our day and age, bad habits of not wanting to take on adult responsibilities can go into adulthood nowadays. Mm-hmm. When that ought not to be the case.
Right.
So these kinds of things do happen in real life. It's very realistic, this scene. And in a way, it's kind of uncomfortable knowing that there's people like this in the world, John.
That's true.
Oh, dear.
That's true. But getting back to the story here, we see that on the camping trip, Fabian is doing the major share of the work as Kevin is just hanging around. But later, Kevin is cornered by Andrea into cleaning the dishes, and he's not too happy about it. But, he's got to do something, I guess. And Rick talks about heading into town to have a tire checked on the van, because it looks a little low. And he says he will call Dr. Barnes. I mean, it's just probably this innocent checking in thing with Dr. Barnes and letting him know they're all right. But of course, Kevin is concerned about this because probably by now the father's trying to, find out where Kevin went.
Yeah. I remember this scene from when I first saw it as a kid, when I watched this episode. I remember this line. Of all the things to remember about this episode, it's not the silly bear we're going to see later.
Right.
It's not that. The one thing that stuck out is Kevin's line to Rick Mason.
Mr. Mason?
Yes.
You're not going to call Dr. Barnes, are you?
Why not?
No reason. Listen, I got to get these dishes done.
Andrea, maybe you and Kevin better have a little talk while I'm gone.
I think I will.
And, of course, as a character, that is a dumb way to phrase the question. Why would you phrase it in that tone of voice and in that manner? You're not going to call Dr. Barnes, are you? That immediately tells Mr. Mason that you don't want, he doesn't want you to call Dr. Barnes because he's going to catch on that you've lied about something. Mm-hmm. Astonishing. But there are such things as dumb criminals in the world.
That's true.
And we see Kevin as a teenager here in high school, the seeds of a dumb criminal. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So later, what we see is that Kevin is scrubbing the dishes, but he doesn't want to finish them. Now, this is really lazy, but you got to admit, again, repeating ourselves, there are people who are like this. They will just do something that's totally irresponsible just because they're trying to get out of doing a duty.
Right.
He doesn't want to finish doing the pans. He takes them and tosses them in the stream. And then he's going to lie about it as to what's happened to them.
Right.
So, oh dear. Now, I got to admit, if there's a reason to become ISIS, this is it.
That's no way to do the dishes. I think Kevin needs a little lesson in responsibility. Mighty ISIS.
You got to go after a brat for trying to get out of the responsibilities of doing pots and pans. So Andrea, she becomes ISIS, and she uses a rhyme to get the tin dishes into a box.
By powers of ore which are exceptionally strong, dishes fly in the box where they belong.
Now, we've seen ISIS use natural forces and rhymes to control the wind and the water and the air when she flies and so on. Did the ancient Egyptians come up with a rhyme for her to chant to get tin dishes into a box?
Kevin, are you finished with the dishes?
Miss Thomas, there was a kind of accident. You see, all the dishes fell into the water and they just disappeared.
Really? Why don't you show me where this happened?
Yeah, sure. Follow me. I was standing right here by the spot. Hey, I don't understand. I mean, those dishes, I don't understand.
Well, they are there, Kevin, and they do look a little better, but I think you better rinse them off once again. Tell me something, Kevin. Why did you change your mind about coming on the Rockhound? Kevin?
I'd rather not talk about it, Miss Thomas.
Hi, Miss Thomas. Mr. Mason back? No, but we got the tent set up. Good, thank you.
All we need now is some firewood for dinner, and I can get that.
I'll go with you.
You have a job right here, Kevin.
All right, but I know how to handle a hatchet, does Fabian?
Okay. But first, please finish the dishes. And don't stay away too long because Mr. Mason should be back. Right?
Right.
Let's go back to camp.
Then we see that some time passes and Fabian and Kevin get to talking later. Now, in that scene, as they transition into the woods, when Kevin and Fabian are talking to each other, Kevin admits to forging the permission slip so he could get out of doing the yard. I mean, again, this is very realistic. Kids do this kind of nonsense. And he wanted to leave before Mr. Mason comes back, and he runs away. Now, that, to me, is a weird choice to make. He wants to run away. And Fabian says, well, wait for me. So I don't understand why Fabian would want to follow him, for one. Why would you want to? Let the kid be a loser and let him suffer the consequences of his own actions. Don't go joining him.
Yeah.
So in the next scene, we see the most interesting bear we've seen in a while. In the bear. You got to see the bear, folks. If you have the ISIS DVDs, you got to watch the bear. Put it on freeze frame. Study that bear.
Yeah.
This is not the bear that we see in the Delinquent episode from the first season of Shazam. I guess a bear wrangler was not available this time because this is not a bear, it's a man in a suit.
Yeah. And it's a pretty bad bear suit. Oh. As we come to the end of Act 1 with our scary bear.
Roar.
Yeah. Reminds me of the old unpack your adjectives. It was a scary bear. It was a hairy bear. So Act 2 opens, and we see Rick returning with the news of Kevin's forged permission slip. And he and Andrea realize that, Kevin's been gone so long that he has had to have run away. So Rick and Andrea head out to look for him.
All right. So in the next scene, we see Kevin literally running with Fabian, following behind. Kevin insists on running. Now, the bear is somewhere around there, Andrea and Rick go looking for them, and they split up.
Before I came to America, I hardly had any fun. All I did was study with my tutors and go to state functions with my parents.
Wow, how come your parents were so strict?
Because someday I may be ruler of my country.
Ruler of your country? Wait a second. Wait a second. You? The ruler of your country?
That's right.
You mean like a king?
Well, sort of, but not exactly.
Well, then how come you don't mind doing chores? You know, like ordinary people.
Everybody has to have some responsibility in life, and mine is to my country and people, that's all.
You really feel that way, don't you?
I think it's a good thing to have responsibility. It makes you feel needed.
So Andrea sees that she's not getting anywhere in the search, and she decides to make the change to Isis.
Mighty Isis.
And she takes to the air in search of the two. And the two realize, we cut back to them, and they realize they're going in circles because they're seeing the same locations they've been in. Fabian's getting tired, and he tells Kevin to go on, but Kevin refuses. And finally we see Kevin, no longer being a jerk. He claims he's going to take care of his friend. He got into this, he'll get them out. So, but what's his way of doing it? He decides, we'll wait it out until someone finds us. Yeah, good old Kevin.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Well, let's wait for someone to rescue us. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Again, he seems to have somewhat of a change of heart, but still he reverts to his own ways. Let somebody else figure it out.
Right.
So, meanwhile, while that's going on, Kevin notices honey in a tree. He can't resist the temptation to go snooping. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, leave it alone. No. Yeah. And Fabian notices bear claw marks and tells him that bears won't allow anyone near their honey trees. And surprise, surprise, the bear shows up.
Yeah.
We were given the foreshadowing of the bear before the last commercial break, and now he's going to show up. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
It would have been cooler if Bigfoot would have showed up this time. We're going to see Bigfoot in a future episode of ISIS. We're going to see Bigfoot in a couple of years with $6 Million Man. Bigfoot was in vogue in 1975. I would have wanted to see Bigfoot rather than a bear. Okay? Now, that would have been cool science fiction. So, in the meantime, this bear shows up, and Fabian gets his foot stuck in a rock.
Yeah.
Now, that's a common theme. We've seen that in prior episodes, where either a foot gets stuck on a rock or your leg gets stuck on something. Some log is bearing down on you. You're stuck. Don't we see this in Shazam, too, at some point? Someone's body limb gets stuck in something?
I know we saw actually somebody's body limb getting stuck in something else where Andrea had to get them out from, like, wood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Isis.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. And it seems that getting limbs stuck in rocks is a common theme of a lot of television shows.
Yeah.
It's a way to create a dilemma for someone to come along and have to rescue the person. I think that's another example of a common trope, John.
Right.
So now the bear, he shows up at the very beginning. He didn't look bad, John. The bear is on all fours in the very beginning. That could have fooled me for a second.
Right.
But the bear gets up on both legs. Now, I know bears can stand on two legs, but this bear is on two legs all the time for the remainder of the scene. So Kevin tries to lure him away from Fabian and the honey tree.
Isis.
Oh, sun on high. Give me your fire to surround this creature harmlessly.
It's obviously a circular gas line buried amidst the fire. That is so obvious, okay? Yeah. I gotta wonder, why were the writers' choices to do that for? It's too fake.
Well, wait a minute. Do you mean the writers with the fire? That's
with
the producers then do. I mean, they probably said, ISIS creates a ring of fire, and the producers are scratching their heads going, how are we going to do this? And somebody said, well, this is cheap and easy, and off they went.
Kevin, are you all right?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Oh, sun on high. Hold back your burning fires and let this creature now retire.
And so they go to the rent of equipment someplace down the street.
Right.
And then the bear is still standing on his hind legs.
Yeah.
That is some stable bear, John. Oh, gee.
Wow, thanks a million, Isis.
Kevin, you okay?
Yeah.
ISIS, I saw everything. That was some trick.
Nothing to it. Let's see about Fabian. Fabian, are you okay?
I guess so, Isis. Thanks to you and Kevin. I'm just stuck.
Oh, I think I can help you there. Powers of the earth, O rocks obey. Lose your hold and fall away.
Thank you, Isis.
Well, Kevin, I sure hope you've learned from this experience.
Have I ever? Not just about bears and honey. I've learned a lot about responsibility.
Wow, this is the most excitement I've had in my life. I'm going to keep a rock from this place as a special souvenir.
Yeah, me too.
Well, that makes 3 of it.
I have to throw in my cynical side in here. How many times have we heard this before? I finally have learned a lesson. Yeah, you're right. So you know what you do next time when you make a mistake. So now later on, Fabian tells the group what happened. They're back at the campsite. Mr. Macaulay has arrived, and he's glad that everybody is okay. And Kevin apologizes to his dad about signing on the permission slip, forging his name on it. Now he remembers his geology and discusses the rock that Kevin happens to be holding. Now Rick Mason asked him to stay, and Kevin wants him to stay as well. Now Mr. Macaulay says they'll have to work double time to get the yard cleaned up before the mom gets home. Mm-hmm. Again, mom is off screen, yet referenced without actually being there. And this scene wraps up with Andrea Thomas asking Rick how Isis got Fabian out of those rocks. Rick tells the story of the bear with the group looking on. Oh, how nice.
Yeah, I did like that ending. It was cute.
It is. But, she takes off her glasses and she eagerly listens as she has the stem of one of the stems of the glasses in her mouth. Kind of like the way you like Andrea Thomas to look, right,
there you
John?
go, yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, dear.
So, once again, the stunts. I mean, no real stunts. Nothing.
No real stunts. I suppose if you had a real bear on the set, there'd be a lot of stunts. People would be getting out of the way of that thing.
I mean, do you get the impression that, once Jackson was gone, they just said, yeah, to hell with this?
Yes. The one guy who was both a stuntman, really, and an athlete and an actor, once he was gone, they said, let's spend the budget on a guy in a bear suit.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Oh, it's
so
sad.
What kind of fashion statements can we make out of this, John?
Well, you seem to have got a lot to say there.
Yeah, well, Fabian's shirt, that outfit, I know for a fact that that's still worn in Africa. I was given a shirt very similar to that.
Really?
I was, when I was in Kenya. That type of shirt, they wear those. I don't wear them all the time, but they wear Western clothing in Kenya and in other places in Africa. They sell a lot of Western clothing, but that type of shirt is native to Kenya and other countries in the African continent, and I have one as a souvenir that was given to me. Now, Rick Mason's loud shirt, that is so 70s, but I swear to God, John, that would pass today. It's worn by modern pastors in mega churches. I kid you not. I know this for a fact. It's supposed to look trendy. Like, I'm sorry, but the day we go back to wearing Rick Mason style shirts, the loud shirts like that to be trendy, is a day that I will not. I just have to regret. I don't like that. Ooh, yuck. Now, Andrea, on the other hand, she wears the same stuff in every episode. Now, she wears like a tight. It's probably a short sleeve shirt with a long sleeve shirt over that. And she does that a lot in these episodes.
Right.
The shirt is often colored differently, but it looks like the same style of clothes in each episode for the most part. Now, Kevin's jeans look like they can pass for the style today. Now, the jeans that Fabian wore in this episode, they look like big bell bottoms with patterns in the jeans. Did you notice that?
No, not really.
Oh, yeah. I said, oh, dear, they had a close-up shot where his foot gets stuck on the rock. I'm going, oh, those pant legs. Horrible. The African shirt is nice, but the pant legs, oh, no. And it's Cindy still wearing those overalls again, John?
Yeah, well.
Oh, gosh. Enough with the overalls. Again, what were the producers thinking?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know, but it was different. And it seemed like it was all acceptable back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will return to ISIS after these messages.
Come to the honeycomb hideout.
I'm Big Betty the Blonde Bomber, and I want a big cereal.
Honeycomb's big, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not small, no, no, no. Honeycomb's got a big, big bite. Big, big taste in a big, big bite.
Right. A good breakfast featuring post honeycomb cereal gives you a
big, big bite.
It tastes right.
Honeycomb bite. It tastes right.
What a lovely day for a picnic.
How about that spot over there?
Perfect.
Wow, I want to climb that tree. Come on, hurry up.
Junior, you be careful.
And stay where I can see you, dear.
Let's go over here.
You bring the basket.
I've got it. We can build the fire right here under this tree.
Isn't this nice?
I'll go get some firewood.
I just wanted my tree.
Don't get lost. We're going to eat soon.
Aren't these hot dogs done yet? I'm
just
hungry.
about ready, dear.
I'll put a little more wood on this fire. We don't want it to go out.
You watch where you're throwing that thing.
Aw, Stella.
Whee!
Hadn't we better get started for home?
Yeah, it's getting late.
Come along now, Junior. It's time to go.
Papa, what about the fire?
Oh, forget it. It'll go out by itself.
You wouldn't want bears to be careless with fire in your home. So don't be careless in theirs.
And now, back to the Shazam ISIS Hour.
Being responsible means many things. It means helping Mom and Dad around the house when you'd rather be outside playing with your friends. It means telling the truth. And it means keeping a promise you've made. But mostly, being responsible means knowing the right thing to do and doing it. See you next week.
So, the moral. This time we've got Isis back to tell us the moral. And again, there's just something about the way she delivers it compared to Michael Gray or even Jackson Boswick, as we've seen so far. She just seems a lot more warm. And, you know, when she says things like being responsible means many things, it means helping Mom and Dad, and you feel like she's talking right to you.
Yeah, but I ignored her anyway. Look, like I said, when I was 8 years old, I watched the show, but I didn't care about doing any of that moral stuff.
Right.
Oh, dear. Mom and Dad around the house. I mean, good grief. I was not about to do that at 8 or 9 years old. I really wasn't. And what I do like, though, I appreciate the fact that somebody found this particular moral tag and included it on the bonus disc of the DVD set.
Right.
And it is preserved for posterity. Good. Now, does that hold up, John? Does this moral hold up for today?
As a moral, it holds up, I think. And I think actually even the story does. The only thing that doesn't hold up is the bear.
Well, he can stand.
Yeah.
I would not wear that as a cheap Halloween costume. Okay.
Oh, man.
So,
All
John,
right.
how many tuts do you have to rate this episode of Rockhound's Roost?
I really like this episode, actually. As much as Kevin is a jerk and all, I really liked... God, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name now, all of a sudden. Fabian. I really liked Fabian and as a character, and I liked the actor and all. So in the end, I'm going to go with a 4 out of 5 tuts.
Yeah, and it's a good story. I like it. I would rate it 3 out of 5 tuts. There's nothing special about this episode. It's good. It's a good story, good characters. You like the characters. The characters are three-dimensional and realistic. They're not cardboard characters. I got to admit that. Mm-hmm. In fact, I said it a few times in this review that the characters really are realistic. The moral certainly holds up to get lazy kids off their beep and be responsible. Oh, God.
It's true. Yeah. Man. So, I mean, we're sort of moving through here. We're not in agreement with the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, some I may have liked, and this one I didn't like as much as you did.
Right, and vice versa.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I just didn't think it's great,
right.
You know? But yeah. It has an important moral. That I can agree to.
Right. So... that's going to do it for this episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast. Tune in next time. We're going to talk about ISIS a little bit in the next episode, even though it is a Shazam episode. In fact, it's the second season finale of Shazam, in which ISIS will guest star in the episode The Odd Couple. Now, are they supposed to be the odd couple, or is it our guest characters? We'll find out, I guess, next time. So until then, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, everyone, Richard, take care.
Take care, everyone. And do check in with us on the Shazam ISIS podcast on Facebook. Like us on Facebook and make your comments. We would like to hear feedback from all of you.